Chapter 4. Sunday late afternoon. Doreen beamed and stepped outside. She set her bowl on the veranda table and walked back inside to get cutlery and water. When she returned, she found Goliath had claimed her seat. Thaddeus was on the back of her chair eyeing her bowl, and Muggs had already taken up residence underneath the table in case something dropped. Mac said, "We still have red wine from last night. We never did have a glass with the meal." He poured 2 glasses, and they sat on the deck with their pasta salad and red wine. Doreen munched on the pasta salad and moaned in delight. "This is delicious. And so different from last night," she said. "And it was so easy. To think you cooked the noodles for 2 meals at the same time." "That's just being smart with your time," he said. She nodded and reached for the glass of wine. She lifted it up and said, "Cheers." "Cheers," he said, "and congratulations on solving yet another case." At that she beamed at him, took a sip of wine and sputtered. He took his sip, rolled it around in his mouth, and swallowed. He placed his glass down, looked at her and asked, "Are you okay?" She gasped for air, nodded and said, "But maybe you'd like my glass too." He dumped her wine into his glass. "Absolutely." She sighed. "I was really looking forward to that too." "Did you not like it?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. He winked at her. "It's obviously not the brand of wine you're used to. I did warn you it was a cheap wine and perfect for cooking," he said. "Still, I never learned to differentiate between wines. I'm more of a beer guy." "In that case, I'd rather have a beer too," she said. He stared at her. "You drink beer?" She frowned. "I think so." "You think so?" She nodded. "At least some of the drinks I had were mixed with beer, I think," she said slowly. "And the wine is okay. I did tell you," she said in a rush, "that I didn't like red wines." "Yes, you did," he said. "Maybe we'll try a white next." Relieved, she sat back. "Yes, that would be great." "I didn't mean to insult you," she said, chewing on her bottom lip. He just smiled. "How could it insult me to know I get to have both glasses myself?" He lifted his glass. "You can have the rest of the bottle too." He looked at her and said, "This is the rest of the bottle." She sighed. "I don't remember you cooking with the wine." "I put it in the sauce when I added the noodles to the salted water last night, somewhere around the time Hornby was being difficult." She curled her lip up at that. "Please tell me that he'll never get out of jail again." "No, he won't. Not with 3 murders under his belt." "What about Susan?" she asked. "Do you think we need to check on her death?" "No," he said. "I already spoke to her doctor. Her fatal breast cancer wasn't her first bout. It had been a recurring problem for her over a good 10 years. She finally lost the battle." Doreen winced at that. "Cancer is the devil," she said softly. "I'm so sorry for her." The doctor said she also had a long history of drug abuse after the accident. "As if maybe she felt guilty?" Doreen said with a nod. As if maybe in her subconscious, she understood what had happened. "I wondered that myself," Mac said. "But no way we'll ever know for sure, not now." She nodded. "It's still sad." "It is indeed," he said. "So what did you find out at Penny's?" he asked out of the blue. She almost choked. When she cleared her throat, she looked at him and asked, "What are you talking about?" He narrowed his gaze at her. She worked hard to put that look of innocence on her face, but it wasn't working when he just narrowed his gaze a little more. Then he tapped his bowl with his fork and said, "Doreen?" She sighed. "You're mean," she announced. "I'm mean?" he asked in astonishment. "This is 2 nights in a row I've cooked you meals." She winced. "Okay, so now that's really mean." He shook his head and said, "I wonder if I'll ever understand you." "Of course you will," she said. What's not to understand? So I'm mean for cooking you 2 meals, he said, and then I'm really mean because why? Because you brought it up, she explained patiently. That was just an added little twist to the mean steak you plunged into my heart. His lips twitched and he chuckled. She glared at him. He held up his hands in peace. You have an interesting turn of thought, he said. She frowned at that. That sounds like something Old English. I was trying to be nice, he said in exasperation. Never mind. I'll eat my dinner. Oh good, she said and proceeded to eat too. When she lifted her head again, he was watching her. You did that on purpose, didn't you? She stared at him and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Just then his phone rang. He groaned, put down his fork, pulled out his phone and said, What's up? You need to go down to Rosemore, said the person on the other end. Doreen could hear the voice from where she was sitting. The dispatcher said, a ruckus with a couple of the pensioners. Doreen gasped. Don't tell me, Max said. Let me guess. Nan is involved, isn't she? The dispatcher on the other end laughed. Absolutely. Something to do with winning another bet, but Richie seems to think he should get half of the earnings. Oh good Lord, Doreen muttered and stood. She walked into the kitchen, grabbed her purse and said, Hate to eat and run, but I'm gone. As she raced out the front door, Muggs barked like crazy at her sudden movements. She could hear Mac shouting behind her, Doreen, you get back here. Like that would happen.